just consider how far these lies go. The Democratic National Convention believed that it was a good idea to send a member, a representative, to the Native American caucus, the Native American Working Group. Do you know which prominent Democrat they sent to the Native American caucus? I know that you know. You know that I know that you know. Take a listen.
Hello to the DNC Native American Caucus. It is such an honor to join you all today.
Hiawatha herself, there she is, Pocahontas, Chief Spreading Bull. This woman who had to drop out of the presidential race, who was crippled going into the presidential race in a way that she never recovered from because she lied about being Native American to get better jobs, to advance in her career. She lied for decades, and then it turned out she's the whitest woman that's ever walked the earth. They sent her, as if none of that happened. You remember at the time she took a DNA test, she said, I might be 1024th Native American. She published this. She sent this to the Boston Globe as though that exonerated her. That's how divorced from reality they are. That's how much they think they can hoodwink you. And they're doing it again. Doesn't matter. Now, part of the reason they sent Liz Warren, in the Democrats' defense, is who else are they going to get? Name me a prominent Native American Democratic politician at the national level. Can you name me one? No, of course not. And frankly, the whole Democratic left-wing argument on Native Americans is they're a separate country, it's their land, they shouldn't participate in colonial American politics. So they're setting themselves up from the beginning not to have any prominent Native American politicians. Also, when you divvy up the electorate and you make your entire base, your whole coalition, just about ever more narrow identity victim groups, well, then you have egg on your face when you don't have a representative for that victim group. I mean, the victim groups divide and divide and divide. There's no end to that. So eventually they're going to run out of people to represent them. They seem already to have done that. That's why they had to send Liz Warren. And then maybe the most egregious lie, the most patently absurd one, came from a little bit of a blast from the past. Bill Clinton, the first president that I remember, going back to some of our childhoods, came out to lecture President Trump. Bill Clinton, who just had photos released yesterday of him receiving a neck massage from one of Jeffrey Epstein's sex slaves. Bill Clinton has a bit of a colorful history when it comes to his personal behavior. Went out and lectured Donald Trump about how to comport himself in the Oval Office.
At a time like this, the Oval Office should be a command center. Instead, it's a storm center. There's only chaos. Just one thing never changes: his determination to deny responsibility and shift the blame. The buck never stops there.
And let me tell you something. If somebody knows about bucking in the Oval Office, it's me, okay? I know a thing or two. I never wanted to stop bucking in the Oval. All right, that's enough. That's enough of that. We all know that Bill Clinton got up to no good in the Oval Office. This was kind of the news story of the 1990s. When I think of coming into watching the news, for the first time following politics, Bill Clinton's personal behavior in the Oval Office would probably be at the top of the list. But he can do it, just like he did it in the 90s. Remember, he came on TV in the 90s, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And then like 5 minutes later, he has to go back on TV, stare at the same TV camera, he goes, all right, I might have had some sexual relations with that woman. Sorry, whoops. Believe me now, though. Believe me, I feel your pain. That's what he always did. The Clintons, probably the most famous shameless liars in the country, and they defined the Democratic Party for decades. But is it still their party? I mean, they've kept the lying, they've kept the dishonesty, they've kept the shamelessness. But why did they put Bill Clinton up there? What were they thinking? Does Bill Clinton really define the Democratic Party anymore? Probably not. They may have wanted to have a voice of relative moderation. It's unbelievable when you think of Bill Clinton's personal behavior that he is a voice of moderation. But he is in today's Democratic Party, which has shifted so far to the left. It is certainly no longer the party of Bill Clinton. The DNC probably hasn't caught up with that, and they're trying to cobble together this coalition of people who all share a similar kind of ideology, but they're in such disparate groups. The Democratic strategy being division, they do have a hard time holding their coalition together. The Democrats feel they can lie because no one holds them to account. That's why. I'm not just talking party to party. Sure, the Republican Party is going to call them out. Shows such as this one are going to call out the lies and point out what they're saying that just isn't true. But more broadly in the culture, they're not going to get called out by Hollywood. Hollywood rewrites their stories for them. Speaking of Bill Clinton, you ever see the movie The American President by Aaron Sorkin? It takes the story of Bill Clinton, a degenerate adulterer who doesn't believe a damn thing, who blows in the wind and all he wants is vanity and power. Bill Clinton turns him into the most wonderful man, caring, unfairly targeted by the right, rewrites aspects of his bio. He doesn't cheat on anybody. He's a widower, all these kind of things to make him seem sympathetic. Obviously, the press are behind him, lower education, higher education, big tech, everybody. Big tech seemed like they were suppressing that photo of Bill Clinton yesterday until it got so ridiculous they had to let it come up on social media. They lie because there is no institution in this country that holds them to account with any success. The one chance we have is occasionally Republicans win elections. Very rarely that matters, so that they can do things in there, and sometimes a conservative commentator will get a word out before the censors come in. But that's it. And so they're going to lie to you, and they're going to gaslight you. I mentioned earlier that the phrase content of your character doesn't have any meaning in this culture. Part of that is because we don't have an objective standard of virtue. Part of that is we don't have an objective standard of communication. We're not speaking the same language. When you communicate with somebody, that presumes that there is objective truth outside of the two of you, and that you are using words and letters and symbols to refer to that objective truth. So even though you might have different perspectives, you're still at least talking about the same thing, so you can have a conversation. The Democrats aren't doing that. At a philosophical level, they don't believe in that. They don't believe in objective truth. They believe in your truth and my truth. They believe in forcing your vision of America through tyranny of the will. They believe in intersectionality, where the only reality is my lived experience and my oppression. That's why you always hear them say, you can't talk about that. That's my experience. You can't erase my lived experience. You can't describe the black experience in America if you're white. Now, for some reason, we, the Democrats, can explain everyone's experience. But in that framework, there's no conversation to be had. There's no good faith debate to be had. This is a brutal battle of interests. We talked yesterday about ways the left is trying to steal the election. That's what it's going to come down to. This is much less a fine debate in your garden or a gentlemanly election than it is a bare-knuckled brawl. That's what the Democrats were signaling yesterday at the DNC. If you enjoyed that break from disinformation, historical revision, and screaming about the end of the world, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another video.